box that popped up on your screen. The rest of you have to answer that question. Theresa doesn't. I apologize, everyone. The last 30 seconds before like an official kickoff time are like the longest, I think, in history. We'll get through it together. Oh, perfect. And there we are. Hi, everybody. It is officially 7 p.m., so I'm going to get the ball rolling. Welcome into another program with the Schomburg Library. My name is Chris. I'm your adult programs coordinator. Welcome into our virtual space again. Before I hand things over and introduce our speaker this evening, just a few of our friendly Zoom reminders. Your cameras and microphones are turned off. So if you're having any technical difficulties and need to get in touch with me, I'm going to ask that you use the Q&A feature. That's going to allow me the smoothest way to go back and forth with you for any of those problems that you may have. I will also offer you up this quick little duct tape problem. If you're having tech problems, you can go check out the Schomburg Library's YouTube page. We are live streaming this Zoom as well. So if Zoom is giving you some difficulties, you can always swing over to YouTube, and that might help a little bit. That has helped some patrons in the past. If you have questions for our speaker, you can throw those in the Q&A as well. We will take all questions at the end of this evening's program, but don't hesitate. You can throw them in as we go. That way you won't forget them later on. And we've also enabled closed captions for your convenience. And fun fact, closed captioning is an AI tool. So look at AI helping us all out today. All right, now without further ado, I'd like to I have it in. This is a peek behind the curtain. I don't memorize my intros, y'all. I have a wonderful introduction for our friend Theresa today. So our speaker is Theresa Benson, a former AI industry insider who now helps everyday people understand what artificial intelligence is, how it works, and what to watch out for. She's the founder of the AI Quilter and author of Digital Muse, Bring AI into Your Creative Process. Before that, she worked behind the scenes in the tech world, shaping strategy, marketing, and messaging for AI and automation companies. Theresa has a unique gift for making complicated ideas easy to understand, and I can confirm that because she has spoken for y'all once before.
Thank
She's
you.
known for teaching creative communities how to use AI without losing their voice, and for helping all of us think more clearly about the risks, scams, and opportunities that come with this fast-moving technology. Everyone, please welcome Theresa Benson.
Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here joining all of you, and I am thrilled. Every time I talk on AI, it seems that the audience continues to grow. And so that gives me hope that we have this vibrant community that is interested in building digital literacy. And that is spectacular. And the fact that libraries are leading the way in digital literacy is even more exciting. So, tonight we're going to talk about AI, scams, and synthetic voices. And the purpose of this is not to scare, it is to inform, it is to empower, it is to help you understand what exists now, what's coming down the line. And I firmly believe that we fear what we don't understand and that education is power. So you are already more powerful by making the choice to be here tonight. So, as Chris said, I do have sort of an odd little background. I have an electrical engineering degree from Iowa State. I grew up in Iowa. I've been in the Chicago area now for about 13 years. I had the unique opportunity of working in Silicon Valley at the birth of the iPod. So I have been through massive seismic technological shifts and seen how they change our world forever. And I feel uniquely positioned in that way to be a person to help you all understand the seismic shifts that are happening yet again when it comes to this technology that is called generative AI, Artificial intelligence as a technology has been around for 75 years. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But generative AI is relatively new in the consumer space. And as with a lot of things, when something enters the consumer space, they can take one of two paths. For a lot of us, you end up doing things like this quilt of Audrey Hepburn. So that quilt is one of my quilts that's won a few awards at quilt shows. And I created a portrait of Audrey Hepburn using artificial intelligence and turned it into a quilt. And I teach quilters how to do that all around the world. And as Chris said, I wrote a book on how to do that as well. But the reason why you're all here is because not everybody uses technology to create good in the world. And so it's incumbent upon all of us to teach ourselves and then take this information away and teach a friend so that we can all lift up society with information. So before we get started, this is for educational and informational purposes only. I am not a legal professional, and the law is rapidly changing. We're going to talk, in fact, a little bit about a law that was just enacted last week for artificial intelligence. So I'm not a legal professional, but I can speak from an informed place. I have dealt with policymakers as it relates to AI, but I am not the end all be all. All right. Again, the goal of tonight is not hype and that AI is magic, perfect, and good. It's also not you should be afraid and terrified and everything like that. It's to strike a balance and help you have awareness, help you ask better questions, and have a better handle on how to know what's real. And when you're not sure, have a plan on how to find the answer. So, first up, we're going to talk a little bit about some myths and misunderstandings around artificial intelligence. There are a lot, but we're going to key in on three of them. The first one, it is too late to understand this massively complicated technology. And I am here to tell you it is not too late. I promise you. There are people like me in the world who are committed to helping people of every skill level understand complex technology. And I know for a fact that you're capable of getting it. I really, really do. I've seen it time and again. The next myth, and I get this one a lot, and interestingly, I get it more from younger audiences. The idea of, well, I'm just not going to use AI. Well, I kind of gave away the punchline a moment ago, but AI has been around for 75 years. If you use GPS that has the ability to tell you approximately what time you're going to get to wherever you're headed, you're using artificial intelligence. It's doing calculations based on how fast you typically drive, inputs from all of the other drivers using that same application as they drive to gauge is there, sort of heavy traffic up ahead and things like that, right? It's using the speed that your phone is moving in your vehicle as you drive down the road. Um, if you use email, especially if you're using Gmail, but even some of the other platforms, and you have a spam filter where you can say this is spam, this is not spam, that's a form of AI as well. Even the power. So I'm coming to you from Houston, Texas tonight. I happen to be down here for a conference, and the power delivery system that is delivering power to my hotel room, to my computer, that is using artificial intelligence to do load balancing so that when it's a really, really hot day, the power company knows it is going to have enough power to deliver for all of us when we run our air conditioning, for example. If you have a credit card, if you have a bank account, if you pay rent or mortgage, your data has been processed by artificial intelligence. So, artificial intelligence, in and of itself, is safe. It's how we as people and how companies and bad actors use it that is what creates the problem. And we'll talk about that. And so this last one is where a lot of people go when they start to hear about the scary things that I'm going to talk about tonight. And they say, well, then AI should be banned entirely. Well, I'm going to show you how and why that is not necessarily the right answer. And I hope by the end of tonight's presentation, you'll agree with me that there is a balance to be struck. So let's talk about what it means to use AI responsibly. Now, like I said, AI tools themselves are inherently neutral. It's a program. That's what it is. It's a big math program. You know, the word algorithm. All that is a super complex mathematical program that is taking in all kinds of factors and then trying to make decisions or predictions like we as human beings do. You know, we have all kinds of rules as people. If it's raining, take an umbrella. If it's cold, wear a coat. We have all kinds of rules and decisions that guide our everyday life. We also have all kinds of predictions that we can anticipate. Like, ooh, that cloud is pretty green. I'm from Iowa, so Tornado Alley back in the 70s and 80s. You know, that cloud is pretty green. I better turn on the radio and see, if there's a thunderstorm warning or a tornado watch or something like that. I'm predicting based on what I've seen before to make a decision about what I do next. Well, very similarly, that's how AI works. And just as similarly, we as people need to bring ethics to these decisions and predictions that we're making. You know, if back in the day you wanted to sign up for store credit, they didn't go run like a full background check. Oftentimes, it was a store manager looking at you and having a conversation with you to determine if you were creditworthy. Now we all know our FICO score within about 10 points, and we can get it in our bank app on our phone, right? And that's all artificial intelligence. Well, a lot of those decisions and biases and thoughts that we have as human beings, because code is written by human beings, can get implemented in the AI systems that are out there. And so there are laws being passed, thankfully, to help protect us as people from having some of those, potentially racist or, sexist predilections that we as people have not impact communities at scale. So when I talk about AI, I like to talk about some of the good that AI is doing before we get into the icky bits. So here are some of the things every Sunday on my Instagram. I share sort of a good news story about what AI is doing out in the world. And so these are just some examples of what AI can do that is good for humanity. So when we think about, oh my gosh, no, 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 AI is terrible, I don't want to use it. Well, AI is also helping communities fight fire faster, or there's AI that helps children who are in war-torn parts of the world deal with the complex trauma that they're experiencing in a region that maybe doesn't have access to therapists, and so it helps them process their feelings. There's also AI that is enabling massive recycling efforts in highly densely populated areas of the country. And there are things like AI-enabled drones reforesting parts of the world. So when people talk about the sins of I like to also think of the better angels of AI and remind people that there is a lot of good that AI is doing. But I also know that there are tons of risks with AI. And so we should always be thinking of that balanced perspective. So the first one is That human prejudice that I talked about. Redlining was a terrible part of Chicago's past, especially where mortgages were declined for certain areas of the city because of people's race or because women were applying for mortgages and they were unmarried or whatever. And if we were to only rely on that data for approval or declining a mortgage, well, then if we were to write programs that sort of codified that, then you could imagine the millions and millions and millions of decisions that could potentially disenfranchise someone. So there are data ethicists and data scientists that are helping ensure that the data that artificial intelligence is built on is clean, and is not going to result in things like that. There's also lots of privacy and data concerns. You do need a lot of information in order to predict the next right step. Think about a farmer's almanac for a second. A farmer's almanac is a really, really old-fashioned way to think about predictive artificial intelligence. The 2026 Farmer's Almanac is built on all of the weather and crop data. Again, I sound like an Iowa girl, but it's built on all of the weather and crop data for the last 100 some years, right? And so all of that data, all of that information, year after year after year informs predictions about what next year is going to be like. And once that almanac is printed, it is fixed for the year. Similarly, with artificial intelligence, these models get lots and lots and lots and lots of data. And then models are built. A model is simply a very advanced program. And those models are then made available so that data scientists or us as consumers can use them. And they rely on a lot of data. Yeah, so there are risks that private information could be put into that training data. And so we want to be really careful about that. There's also, and this happens regardless of the automation, whether it's going from hand sewing to a sewing machine, whether it's going from like putting bolts on tires on a production line to having a robot doing it, or now, for the first time, creatives and thought workers are finding some of their jobs are being replaced by automation. And that is part of time immemorial. It really, really is. Even going from walking to a horse to a car, right? In every stage of innovation of technology, there will be some level of different disenfranchisement. And so making sure that we're balancing this desire for speed against human needs. But the one we're really going to talk a lot about tonight is this fake content. It enables really convincing things to be created. And so I want to empower you with some tips and techniques to be able to detect it for yourself. So, first up, let's talk about what historically has been the way that you could detect an AI generated image. Yeah. And in the quilting world, I am sort of an oddball in that I use artificial intelligence to help me create some of my designs. And one of the things that I'm starting to notice is that people will see an image and absolutely insist that it's AI generated, when in fact, it happens to be somebody's human creation. So it's starting to get really, really hard to tell the difference. And sometimes we as human beings are now finding mistakes in an image. Oh, that's the computer. This is terrible. When in fact, we as human beings aren't perfect, and sometimes artists make mistakes in our images. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment, but we have all become hyper vigilant to this idea of, oh, hey, there are telltale signs that something is an AI generated image. And these are some of the classic ones. You'll often see teeth, are not put in a mouth properly. Or fingers, maybe there's an extra one on a hand, or sometimes there will be three arms. If you look closely, you'll see a person has two arms, but then maybe there's a third arm sort of wrapped around the friend. Those are all telltale signs that it's AI, or it's a really young Photoshop intern who made a mistake as they were creating image. Sometimes you'll look at an image and there will just be something that feels off. And if you look closer in the background, you'll realize that there are certain details that don't seem to make sense. Or if you start to look at the shadows, every image has a source of light, right? Even the photographs we take. But for AI, it is a pattern um, generator. It is looking at millions and billions of images and learning about light, but it doesn't have the same sort of intuition that we do. And so sometimes you'll see shadows coming from multiple directions, and you don't notice it unless you really, really pay attention. Sometimes things will break the laws of physics. It just won't it just will be something that does not, in your core, can't happen for real. And the last one, watermark traces, that is becoming less and less of a problem. But in the early days of consumer generative artificial intelligence, generative AI means the type of AI that creates generation, right? Um, There are laws in place around the world that allow researchers to use copyrighted material for the purpose of research. Yeah. Because, copyright really protects the creator of text or an image from someone else commercializing their idea and making money off of their innovation, right? But researchers have the ability to study those works without risk. And what happened is a lot of these generative AI platforms started out as research. And so there's a famous data set called the Lion 5B data set. It's 5 billion image text pairs. And what I mean by that is a photograph that happens to have a caption or a description or keywords with it. It's about 5 billion image text pairs that were scraped from the internet. And in many cases, there are a variety of image platforms out there, iStock Photo, Getty Images, Dreamstime, and others, where they make money by buying images from photographers and then reselling the rights to those images to other people. So the artists get compensated, and then the platform also gets money for hosting that image and passing it on to someone else. Well, in the early days, these researchers used the watermark images. And because computers, again, don't have that intuition, if there were, little logos that said iStock photo all over the picture, which I know we've all seen that, where there's those watermarks, a computer doesn't know that those aren't supposed to be there. And so when you would ask a computer to create an image of a flower bouquet, occasionally you would see these little sprinkles and blobs. They almost look like snowflakes on an image that AI would generate. And that's because it learned how pictures of flowers should look by looking at a bunch of watermarked images of flowers. Think about it. If you taught a child that every four-legged animal with fur was a dog. And then you ask that child to draw a giraffe. The child would most likely draw another dog because it doesn't know any better. And so, similarly, computers are the same way. And so, famously, this is probably one of the most famous spoofed images out there that got a lot of people talking. It's of the Pope. And there are a number of little things. Now, at a distance, this main image honestly looks like it could be a real photograph. Yeah. And it's only when you start to look closely that you see oddities. For example, the eyelid and eye sort of blend in with his glasses. And the glasses, by the time you get down here to the bottom, almost blend in with the skin of his cheek. Or there's a crucifix around his neck, yes. And from a distance, you don't really notice it, but up close, you'll see that there's no chain on the other side going back up around his neck. So it's just sort of floating there, defying the laws of physics. Or here's another one. His fingers are sort of closed around air rather than actually grabbing the cup. And so, with this new era of generative AI, we really have to start looking at some of these with a much more critical lens. So, I'm going to show you a couple more and give you another few examples of why these images and how and where to look to see what's real or fake. Now, obviously, a robot having a birthday party, it's probably not real unless that was a really convincing toy robot. But there's another really obvious clue that most people won't see right off the bat, and it's this. There are four flames down here on this little birthday cake. This comes from my book when I talk about the history of AI. So there are four flames on this birthday cake, but there are only three candles, right? So it's a little detail that makes all the difference. This one, it could be a lovely quilter's paradise with all of that beautiful, beautiful fabric. But if you start to look at the angles of the shadows going across the fabric and down the wall, and then you compare it with the window pane, you start to see that there's something wrong with the image. You might not, it might not be obvious, but there's a term in technology called the uncanny valley. And it's a place that sits in between something that is very obviously fake and something that is quite real. And it's this moment where you don't know what's off, but something's wrong. And so I'm going to show you a couple more to just show you how difficult and interesting things are becoming when it comes to detecting AI generated images. So in this example, I asked AI to generate an image of a dog sitting next to a table that had a bouquet of flowers in a pitcher. So in this first image on the left, it's an adorable little dog, but again, as you start to look at the picture, you see some odd things. For example, I assume that this is a window pane, but you can see how it kind of goes and curves into that bigger black thing right there. That's not normal for architecture. Or if you look at the dog's collar, you see this little weird thing here. No dog's collar would have a latch like that. And this leash, if you were to see it up close, there's no beginning and no end. It's sort of attached to itself, and there's no actual hook to hook it onto a collar. Now, the one on the right is so much more convincing to me until you take a closer look at that dog. That dog should be on the defensive line for the Chicago Bears. Maybe they'd be, doing better. Um, the dog's neck is so thick. It starts over here, and, the shoulder is off to the right over here, and it goes well into this picture over here. I don't know a single golden lab that has a neck that thick. But in every other way, it's an incredibly convincing image, right? The problem with everything that I've just told you is that generative AI today, right now, is the worst it will ever be here on out. Today, right now, is the worst it will ever be. And so everything that I just told you about, oh, look at this little detail and look at this little thing, right? Those artifacts will soon be harder and harder and harder to distinguish. You know, um, the clues are not going to last. And so it's really important that you develop an inner compass, and we'll talk about that. Develop an inner compass and a practice that you can come back to time and time again to help you stay digitally literate over time. Because check out these images. I would love for you, if you want to do it in the chat, in the Q&A, or just in your own mind, I'll give you a moment. Think about which of these two images is fake. I'll just give you a quick moment while I take a little sip of soda. Okay, it's the one on the left. It's the one on the left. Now, what's interesting is the one on the right actually looks more perfect. There's not so much glisten and things like that. But if you pay close attention, this young woman's inner eyelashes on her bottom part of her eyelid are either exceptionally long, or AI doesn't understand exactly how human hair works, and that this is actually part of a piece of hair attached to her scalp way up here. It just sort of breaks right here in the middle. Yeah, because the AI is trying to generate a beautiful image. Now, this one's even harder to detect, right? So these are two images. One of them is a real photograph. I'm not tricking you here by saying, oh no, they're both fake or they're both real. One of them is a real photograph and one of them is fake. So take a moment and see if you can sort of guess which one's which. All right. It's the one on the right. And there's very little cues that would tell you that this is fake. There are very few cues. One of the big ones is that this chair back is not what we would, normally expect to see in a ladder back chair. Normal ladder back chairs have those things evenly spaced. You might start to say, well, these are missing that third one altogether. And yeah, that's true. But in a sort of bohemian interior decor, people might have mismatched chairs like that. So I say this to say it is only getting harder, and so we need to come up with some tools to help us. The bad guys are already taking advantage of some of these little nuances. And I want to make you aware of one if you're a gardener, because the quilters I work with have told me about this. Plant scams are on the rise. And so I'm going to walk you through a framework that will help you, not only with something like plant scams, but with other things. So what's happening are people are generating images of exotic looking, beautiful plants. They're putting themselves in those pictures, like the one on the right, and they're selling seeds on places like Amazon until they're caught, but Etsy, Facebook Marketplace, and other places. And they're preying on us. And the thing is that with plant scams in particular, they're only charging anywhere from $7 to $35 depending. But if they can get thousands and thousands, if not millions of people to click and buy these plants that don't exist, well, then that's thousands and thousands, if not millions of dollars that they're making because they can make such convincing images. So, it's important to analyze and look. But if you start trying to overanalyze, it's like, a whodunit movie or a whodunit book where you're looking for the clues and what's the thing that's going to, there will come a point where, and I think we're already seeing it a little bit in the news and in politics, there will come a point where people start to use that overanalysis and skepticism against you. So I just got done telling you, take a look at all of these little details, and those are some clues to help you understand when something is fake. And then now I'm telling you, but at the same time, you do need to check your skepticism at the door. So you're probably saying at this point, Teresa, wait, you're telling me two different things. Well, we're going to talk about that. Some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves is, what do you actually see? And then take that a step further and say, does it align with what you know to be true? Not, what you believe, but what do you know to be true? Would the Pope wear a several $1,000 puffy Balenciaga coat in the middle of spring and flaunt wealth in that way? Probably not. Um, would an exotic plant that is rare be only $6? Like, is it true? Is the image or the information intended to make you feel something? I am a former VP of marketing. My job was to make people feel things with the advertisements that I would help create, because when you can emotionally connect to a product, you're more likely to purchase it. And so, is this intended to make you feel something or act a certain way? That's only going to get harder as we approach midterm elections and the next presidential election, right? This idea of moving you to take action or inaction. Are the details consistent? Do you trust the source of the image that you're getting and not that your friend shared it to you on Facebook or Instagram? But where did they get it from? The true source of that image. And then is that source credible? And if it is in any way emotionally charged, is it um, just a terrifying image? Take a moment and sift through your feelings. And so, SIFT is an acronym I want you guys to remember. And so, if you're taking notes, maybe you write this down. SIFT. You want to sift through your feelings about the thing that you're seeing. So the S stands for stop. Don't share. Don't take action. Don't just immediately about whatever it is that you're seeing. Stop. Because you yourself, if you live with integrity, don't want to be part of spreading misinformation. And so it's really okay to take a beat. The second thing, investigate. Investigate the source. This isn't rude. If your best friend sends you something and is like, oh my gosh, can you believe this? I can't believe this happened. You questioning if that's true is not questioning the integrity of your friend. It just means that maybe, just maybe, you have this much more digital literacy than the next person. And it's an opportunity for you to give them the gift of that knowledge. And so taking a moment to investigate the source, to verify its credibility, is really, really important before you then pass it along. It's just like gossip when we were in grade school, right? You don't want to pass along something if you don't truly know it to be true. Especially if it comes to news, find another source, find more coverage from places that you trust, and whenever possible, try to find a neutral third party. One of my favorites is Snopes. Snopes has never been partisan as long as they've been around, and I really respect them for that. So Snopes.com is a great source, but even, your local news, although they can be tricked as well, but they'll issue corrections when they're wrong. And then finally, like, do a little homework, trace claims or quotes back to the source. I have definitely gotten caught up in fear-mongering Instagram posts myself and taken a moment and I've Googled things to see what's really true. And so I thought we would just go through this really quick with these plant scams. You might not be a gardener, but this will work for just about anything. So this is an ad that somebody sent me. It's from an Etsy listing. And the bad actor in this case is preying on our curiosity and excitement for a new discovery because there aren't a ton of new things out there in the world anymore. We've done so much discovery as a human, species. They're also preying on our ego. If you are a gardener, you want that cool plant. You want your garden to be special and beautiful. They're also preying on our willingness to part with $6.50, right? $6.50 doesn't feel like somebody is trying to get one over on you. They're not trying to get $3,000 from you, right? Thing is, if they can do it at scale, or if they can get you to buy several things at $6.50 and suddenly it's $600, that adds up quickly for them. They also are preying on our impatience. It is so easy to just click the buy now button instead of stopping, checking, and then making our purchase, right? The convenience of the internet is wonderful, but it also can lead to our problems. And then, of course, our love of a bargain, right? So stopping is super important. The next thing is investigating. So this mother of millions live plant, I just want to show you. So, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous. They're actually using a name, its Latin name. They've used AI to marry up a similar plant name and then given it a fancy Latin sounding name so it seems legitimate, right? So I'm going to just come to Google and do Mother of Millions. And what you'll see pretty quickly is, oh, hey, Devil's Backbone, that's what it is. But if you read and you start to look, now see 101 Mother of Millions seeds. Here are ads that the bad guys want you to click on and buy. But if you keep going down and you click on one of these and you look at something that is a legitimate website, you can go to your local garden center or anything else. This plant looks nothing like the thing the bad actors want you to buy and to part with. And in fact, what they're hoping you'll do is you'll go, oh, yep, that Latin name looks like the Latin name on the thing that I want to buy that's special and beautiful and good. So take a moment, take a breather, call your local, master gardener, go to your university extension website. They'll have information about plants that are good for your planting zone. Yeah. And then do only a few of the same websites show up? If I clicked on those two ads for this image that you saw on the right-hand side, they would go to the exact same Etsy listing. You know, it's not like there are a million different planting centers or garden centers selling this thing. So sift, stop, investigate, find other sources that you trust, and then trace the thing back to where it came from. Yeah. But it's more than just images at this point. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other ways that bad actors are using this beautiful technology for harm. Um, Swatting, if you're not familiar with swatting, that's making fake 911 calls and getting police forces to deploy resources um, that ultimately harm, families, schools, libraries, that sort of thing. I was actually a guest on a podcast recently, and the host told me about a situation where um, some bad folks called her mother. So the host of the podcast is in her 50s. Her mother's in her late 70s. And somebody called and said that they were the host's son, so this woman's grandson. And it sounded just like him. But just like with images, there was something that felt off about the conversation. And so, thank goodness, this, 78-year-old woman had the presence of mind to go, hang on, my grandson doesn't call me grandma. My grandson calls me Bubby. And this person who was impersonating her grandson kept on saying, Grandma, I need your help. Please, I need your help. Please help me. I need money. I'm in trouble. And it was only because of that one little detail that she was able to say, let me call you back. She immediately called her daughter to say, is my grandson okay? And he was asleep in the next room. Everything was fine. Everything is safe. Um, Deepfake videos are being used for political misinformation right now. And again, right now, generative AI, this is the worst it will be. It will only get more accurate and more realistic from here. People are also fabricating everything from video evidence. There are video memes going around on Instagram with fake Ring doorbell videos of like grizzly bears jumping on trampolines and lions walking through backyards. It's terrible, but there are young people making um, pornographic videos of ex-girlfriends where they take the head out of a photograph and attach it to the body of somebody else. Now, stuff like that's been going on time immemorial. It just so happens that at one point it was painted, then it was photoshopped, and this is the next, generation of it. But, that's some of the ways that people are using AI for harm. And again, this type of stuff, prank calls and that sort of thing, have been going on. I remember when I was a kid and we still had telephones with curly cords, and you would make a funny phone call to somebody and hang up, and you might try and fake a voice. But it's different now. And so I'm going to play an audio clip, and for those of you who might find this frightening, it's okay if you want to mute your speaker for a moment. And what'll happen is on the next slide, you can turn the audio back up. But I made the following audio with a free application. And what you're going to hear is my voice in the beginning. And what I'm doing is I'm going to show you what one of these fake 911 calls looks like. But what I'm also going to do is show you how I can modify my voice so that the police would never be able to figure out it's me. Okay, so here we go. And again, if something like this makes you uncomfortable, you're welcome to mute your speaker. And then when you see the screen change, come back to us, okay? All right. Oh gosh. Hello? Hello? Can anyone hear me? 911, are you there? Oh my God, I'm so scared. Um, yeah, I'm at the Schulberg Library.
Please send help. Oh my gosh, please send help. There's at least four of them. A few of us are hidden in a bathroom downstairs. We're at 130 South Roselle. Please hurry. I I don't know if they have weapons. Oh gosh, someone's coming. I've got to go. Please send help.
That's pretty scary, right? So I recorded audio and using a free application available to anybody, I was able to change my voice. And it sounded just like a guy making that phone call. And so, police infrastructure is being impacted by this type of stuff. Oh gosh. Oops. Okay. So the new family emergency call. Common scenarios include calls using cloned family members' voices. You only need about 15 seconds of a person's voice in order to make a relatively convincing um, fake. Now, if you have more audio, it will be better because they get the inflection done much better. But you will often hear people calling asking for money for bail, or they're in the hospital. They couldn't find their insurance card. They have to pay a little something, that sort of thing. And again, there's this sense of urgency, right? And just like with images, you can make fake voices of all kinds. So here's another example.
Hey, Mom. Mom, are you there? Mom, I can't hear you, but I hope you can hear me. Hey, I think I really screwed up. I don't know what to do.
So in that case, it's a common tactic that they will pretend like they can't hear you because they've pre-recorded something using a text-to-speech sort of program. And so they'll be like, I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Mom. But please, I need help. Can you please? They say, if you send money, then we'll be okay. So here is another one.
Hey, Mom. Mom, are you there? Mom, I can't hear you, but I hope you can hear me. Hey, I think I really screwed up. I don't know what to do. Um, they say that if I can pay, then
Hey, Mom.
So in both of those cases, it was fake. Sorry, I did cheat there. But in both of those cases, I simply typed text and generated those voices. The inflection, the emotion, that is all from a computer. So similarly to the SIFT framework, you need to do the same thing here. Verify before you take action. Ask if you can hang up and then call back on a trusted phone number. Um, Phone numbers can be spoofed and it can look like it's coming from your bank. It can look like it's coming from the police department. It can look like it's coming from anywhere. Caller ID can be faked. So hang up and call back to a trusted number. Set up a family safe word. I don't care if you're 13, 30, or 85. Make sure that you and your friends and your family have safe words that you never share digitally. Don't share it in a recording. Don't share it in an email. Simply share it among yourselves. Make sure everybody, if you're 4, 40, or 80, know what that safe word is and remember that you need to share it if you are ever legitimately in trouble. You know, it's so important. That's the only way that that grandma knew that that wasn't her grandson, that he didn't call her Bubby. Now I'm kind of in a pickle because I am online. I have a Zoom channel or a YouTube channel. I also have Instagram and Facebook, and I'm out there teaching digitally. So my voice is out there. But if you don't have to be, don't be. If you don't have to be, don't be, because less voice and less video of yourself gives scammers less opportunity to clone it. Check your sources before sharing political bombshells. It's only going to get harder as we get to midterms and later the next election. Check your sources. Make sure, take a breath before you share. And then advocate for ethical technology. And as an example, California, they're the fourth largest economy in the world. They're larger than most countries in the world. They have passed one of the best, most amazing AI laws in the United States, second only to it's better than, but it's the second law of its kind. The first one was in New York City, where there's AI safety and transparency. And it requires AI companies to be setting up safeguards to make it harder for bad actors to do these types of things. And so, if you are politically active, or if you haven't been and you choose to be now, pressure our legislators to create laws to keep us safe. But remember, emotionally intense content is where the scammers can do the most damage. If it's trying to scare, shock, or manipulate you, it is important to slow down. It is so hard in the moment. Our lizard brain, our amygdala, the thing that kept us safe from woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers, right? Wants to keep us safe in these moments when loved ones are calling us afraid. Take a moment and take a breath. Our loved ones, if they really are in trouble, will understand that because they love you and want to keep you safe. And so they'll be so proud of you that you took a breather before taking action if they really are in trouble. And remember that AI tools themselves are inherently neutral. We as people bring the ethics. And so I mentioned about, hey, why not just ban voice cloning, right? Well, if we did that, we would prevent things like this. And I'm just going to share a little bit of the story and then you can hear the
It's the
rest.
first time he's ever received or sent a text message.
New message from Mark. Ben, I got it working.
Did you hear it? So now the messages will play for you and you'll be able to hear it while you're in your apps.
My brother has an ultra rare condition called TUB4A related leukodystrophy. It's progressive, and over time, it took away his speech and mobility. By his early 20s, the only way he could communicate reliably was by moving his head left or right to say yes or no. Finding a way for Ben to communicate on his own has always been a challenge. The tech that exists, eye tracking, head tracking, even brain-computer interfaces just don't work for him. And before he lost the use of his hands, the device he had never really fit. So he went almost a whole decade only saying yes and no. But then he moved in with me and my wife, Nancy, and I made it my mission to give him some independence back. I built a system using AI and 2 buttons, one on each side of his head, so he could navigate with the one thing he could do reliably. The menus are big and clear for his vision, and over time, we added phrase boards, a predictive keyboard, access to all of his favorite shows and movies, custom games, and even Google and YouTube searches. But this new Messenger app is something different. Ben has been typing messages. For the first time, our family is able to have real conversations with him at his pace through direct messaging.
Beam and Penny reacted thumbs up. Glad to hear. For Nancy and Ori. Send message. G. Good.
So, if we were to say that it should all be banned, then young men like him, can you imagine going a decade only being able to communicate by saying yes and no? And even then, you're not saying yes and no, you're just tapping 2 things on either side of your head. There's so much good in the world. Just like spam and phishing emails, you can adapt. It really is okay. Digital literacy is our seatbelt for this new era. And AI gives people like that young man a voice. So check your sources, examine your intention, think before you share. Don't overshare if you don't have to. Ask, who might this hurt if I were to share it? And if it feels too perfect, it just might be fake. Thank you so very much for investing an hour with me and investing an hour in your digital literacy It's a true privilege to be able to serve the Schaumburg Library District community in this way. The QR code on your screen will go to my website, and you can shoot me a little message to tell me what you thought about this presentation. You can also sign up to be on my mailing list. And my book, Digital Muse, is available both on my website and on Amazon. Thank you so very, very much for this opportunity.
Teresa, thank you so much. Now, I know we're close on time. We did have a couple questions I'd love to hit.
Yeah.
Before we do, I want to, again, if you guys enjoyed hanging out with Teresa for this past hour, guess what? You can do it again this very week in the most like random. The Schaumburg Library is celebrating Digital Inclusion Week, which is this week. It started today. No, today's Tuesday. Yesterday, it started yesterday. And it'll end on Friday. So Teresa's actually going to close us out on Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. It's going to be online and on YouTube, and we'll have a recording available. If you can't go, at least register for it so you know you can get that recording. And that's live now on the Schaumburg Library website. And she's going to be talking about digital inclusivity. And she already talked a little bit about it right there at the end, too. So you guys can just see how wonderful and important all that stuff is. There's other initiatives the library is doing throughout the week. You can check that out. If you go to our website and go to events, you can type in digital inclusivity or digital inclusion. That's what I'm looking for. And they'll pop up. You can also see stuff on our social media. Now, the questions. How is there AI in war-torn areas that have no electricity?
Ah, so how is there AI in war-torn areas where there is no electricity? Well, I think that's making some assumptions that there is no electricity in war-torn areas. There are backup generators, there's Starlink, satellite internet. People are getting by. People are definitely getting by. I have friends from the Ukraine who live in Poland, and their family is still back there. And they absolutely still have access to power.
Um, some of these, and this is referring to like when you showed the chairs and the different like which is fake, which is not.
Mhm.
Um, some of these you would need background information to know if it's fake or true. Uh, in this example, the patron uses the chairs, didn't know the history of ladder back chairs, so they didn't see through this. Same with the plants. Is uh, uh, sorry, I'm sorry,
Like
I started
how can you
truncating this. Uh,
how could you possibly know?
yeah,
So
what would you do in those situations if
yeah.
you're not an expert in these things?
Yeah, so a great question. So a lot of companies are now digitally watermarking their images when they're generated by AI. And so you can then look at the image, and sometimes there's a little shape in the lower right-hand corner that indicates it, or there's information that we as human beings don't see called metadata that's embedded in these digital images. And when you upload those images to platforms like Google and ask it, is this real or is this generated? It can read that metadata and let you know. I will send to you, Chris, a couple free applications where you can upload images and detect it. I'll take a note to do that as a follow-up.
Great, awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
A couple other questions from online. Is Google better than other privacy preserving search engines like DuckDuckGo for researching, in specific example, like the plants, and so researching those AI things?
Yeah. Google will have a much broader reach. They have a much larger database than a lot of the other ones. You can, when you search, Google, personally, I mean, Google is the largest database. It's the white pages of the internet. And they are much more advanced in their ability to do reverse image searching. Like if you've ever seen the television show Catfish, where you can reverse image search people. And so Google, Wikipedia, um, there are a number of national like gardening organizations. There's Victory Gardens over in the UK that has a website, and your local university extension has a website. All of those are great places to do research. But yeah, so it's not it's not going to be as private as a DuckDuckGo. You know, your search, anytime we touch a computer that talks to the cloud, anytime, um, our digital signature is being sent along with our question, right? And so just make sure your questions are pure, I guess. You know, make sure that those questions are things that you don't mind asking, or visit your local library and they have digital resources. You can talk to librarians or use computers at the library to ask your questions as well.
I'll take that opportunity to pitch. We have an entire technology learning department here at Schaumburg,
Exactly.
and the woman in that department who manages most of our tech classes, she runs a couple of ChatGPT classes. She just started up a Spot the Bot class. You can find those on our website. So if this is something you guys are all interested in, please check out Samea's classes. And you're always welcome to go up to our adult information desk that's on our second floor. The person who sits, if you're looking at the desk on the furthest left, is usually it's from our technology learning department, and they're always more than happy to answer questions or help you with anything you may need, AI or otherwise. Let's see. Why not use images with a, ooh, this is language I don't know. Hopefully you do. A
Okay.
PGP key and have the images be verified with GNUPG.
Yeah, that's a whole deeper conversation. That's maybe not as relevant for the whole audience, but yeah, I mean, there will look, for every way that the AI industry is evolving their technology to try and watermark and do other things so that you can tell the difference between an AI generated image and another thing. There are going to be people who know how to strip those watermarks out, how to strip out that metadata. You know,
Hmm.
um, for every regulation, there's somebody looking for the loophole.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I think those will be good for a while, and then they'll figure out a way around that as well.
All right, well, Teresa, I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time. It's late where you are, you're at a conference, but if we could just wrap with one, I have a question for you.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you've mentioned we've had artificial intelligence for 75 years, right? And
Mhm.
we're experiencing a new influx and wave of how it works and how we interact with it. And it can be a little scary. It can also obviously, you know what? I do have a quick side question. Can you use your Audrey Hepburn quilt, or is it just a piece of art? Can you wrap up in that and watch a movie in it?
I could if I wanted to. It's about, but like a small child probably could. It's about 40 inches tall, you know.
Oh my gosh.
So it hangs on my wall in my office. But I could, yeah, absolutely. It's
I was just curious. I was like,
washable
is
and
this like a quilt that like you can enjoy or
yeah,
like as like for warmth or just to enjoy as art? But sorry, I went off
no,
a
that's
tangent. But
okay.
anyway,
That's okay.
so
Yeah.
we've been seeing this stuff for so long, and this is obviously not the first time, I'm
No,
sure, that
no.
AI has been a source of discomfort and potentially fear. Uh,
Mhm.
can you maybe quickly kind of touch on like how we've gotten through that in the past and accepted AI? Uh,
Yeah. If I could, I would rather almost like go a little bit broader to new
please.
technologies, right? Like if you think back to the invention of the camera, right? The invention of the camera that was at a commercial price point that local photographers started showing up, with the big black capes and everything like that. Portrait painters were terrified. It spelled the end of their art, and yet, right? And yet, there is still beautiful artwork being created. And there is still a place for both photography and art, painted art, pastel art, everything like that to still coexist. And, similarly, um, yeah, like uh, other people said, well, camera is the lazy way out. You just have to push a button, and then where's the art in that? Well, I can tell you, Ansel Adams versus my iPhone pictures, they're night and day, right? He is a master of light and the f-stop and everything like that. So there is a place for both to coexist. Uh, you know, and where the problem comes in and where the legislation in California and New York City are really striving to fix things is that with artificial intelligence, it's created by humans and humans are flawed. Humans have bias. Humans have, predilections toward things. Automated tracking systems for job searches, right? There was famously a case, I think it was Amazon, but I can't be certain, where um, it was dismissing female applicants at like just this alarming rate. And it was because the algorithms that were used to flesh out candidates were looking for phrases and language that typically men put in their resumes. Now, there could be a highly driven female executive that was performant in all key categories for a particular job, but women and men express themselves differently in language. When two people, talk about their careers, it sounds very different just because of how we are raised, our gender, our experience of the world. And AI had been built in such a way that it preferred these male characteristics. They weren't aware of it, they didn't realize, but it suddenly disenfranchised an entire gender at scale. And so there are going to be these bumps up against biases that we as human beings didn't know we had, but are shown to us when, they happen at scale. And we'll get through it. We will. We absolutely will get through it. We will adapt. We'll go through the 5 stages of change, denial, bargaining, grief, something in anger, grief, and acceptance. And I have a feeling we're sort of in the anger stage at the moment and a little bit of denial.
Wonderful. Well, Teresa, thank you so much for ending on those thoughts. And I can't wait to hang out with you a little bit more this Friday. I hope to see you all this Friday from 1 to 2. But otherwise, if not, I'll see you all the next program here at the library. And everyone have a great rest of your evening.